Hi everyone, I'm Clara Audry and I'm a partner at the VC fund Caphorn. I'm very happy to be moderating this panel today about tomorrow's European city. So back to the future, where we are here today with you to discover how our cities will look like in the future. Will we have flying cars? Will we have to run 100 meters hurdle between scooters? Will we be walking barefoot in a green city? And that's what we are going to discuss. Maybe to get started, can I ask you to introduce yourself? Meriem?
Hello everybody, I'm Meriem Riadi, I'm the Group Chief Digital Officer of Suez. So Suez is a leading player in environmental services, water supply, waste management and smart city. And at Suez, I'm leading the digital transformation program around customer experience, data, and new business models.
Hi, everybody. My name is Oliver. I am one of the co-founders and the chairman of Skeleton Technologies. At Skeleton, we manufacture energy storage devices. What maybe makes us a little different from others is that we don't think that there is a one-size-fits-all solution in energy storage, but rather we need to be taking a application-specific look so we don't under or over-engineer for specific applications, and this means that we can get the costs down and increase the adoption of electric vehicles if what we call right-size the solution. So how we do this is we have three different technologies that we make. Supercapacitors, so we're best in the world in supercapacitors. We have 4 times higher power density, and now we just came out with the news the other day that we have 40 times higher energy density as well than the next best. And to that, in a few years, we will be adding what we call super batteries, where we combine the benefits of supercaps and batteries. And finally, to round it off, we're also developing our version of solid-state batteries for long-term applications, long-term use, such as passenger vehicles.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Kendall, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of WAYVE. We're an autonomous driving company, and autonomous driving is going to completely change the way that we move around cities, making it much more sustainable and safe to do so. You've probably seen a lot of the initial trials in autonomy, mostly within constrained environments, mostly in North America and China. And there's been $100 billion poured into this domain so far, and we've started to see some initial trials. But we're doing things differently. We're building a solution that can really scale and adapt to complex environments and build a technology that will take it out of these constrained environments and bring it into cities like you see here in Paris or other European environments. We're currently testing our technology on the roads in the UK, doing both ride-hailing and last-mile grocery delivery, and are really excited to scale this technology to the world.
So hello, I'm David Monteau. I'm the Director for Economic Development at the Metropole du Grand Paris. Metropole du Grand Paris is the Greater Paris Authority. The territory is the urban area of the Paris region. Around Paris, it's 8 times bigger than Paris, 7 million inhabitants. So it's a big area and urban area. And we are running public policies on urban planning, the environment, quality of life, and economic development, for example.
Thank you all. So as you can see, we have a lot of different areas covering a wide range of topics to discuss about the future of the city. Maybe to start with the first question, what are the main challenges to tackle to build a dynamic but also more sustainable cities? Maybe Meriem to get started?
Yes, thank you. I think that one of the biggest challenges is the data access, the data usage around cities. So at Suez, our ambition is to be a partner of the environmental transition of cities. And to do that, data and digital is absolutely key. So to give you some examples, if we want to be more resilient in the way we build infrastructure, we maintain infrastructure and operate infrastructure, the fact of having the right sensors, the right algorithms to be able to manage properly this infrastructure is absolutely key. So, for example, for our pipes, we do have in some of our regions some sensors that enable us to predict the pipe breaks and locate them, and this enables us to properly maintain the infrastructure and have an optimal way of planning our works and so on. So this is a first example. Another objective for us is really to be resilient in the way we reuse the resource. It can be the waste resource, it can be the water resource, and once again, data and digital are absolutely key to do that. For example, in our sorting centers, we are using AI to better qualify the quality of waste, and this enables us to optimize the reuse of this resource. So this is something absolutely key. And another objective for us is really to build the right solutions to recover, remediate some problems such as air quality. And for that as well, sensors, algorithms are absolutely key for this objective. So for me, the main stake today around a sustainable or smart city is the fact of having right data, accessible data, and to develop the usage of data around our services.
Very clear. So basically, you can't change or reduce what you don't measure. So I guess first, very interesting thought. Maybe David, on your side?
I would say, well, data, the digital and innovation should be at the service of bettering the city and fostering or accelerating the transition towards a more sustainable city. And a more sustainable city is really how it is built, how it is planned, and how it works properly, how people move, and the decarbonation of the buildings themselves, of how do you manage the energy of the buildings, how, of course, you developed soft mobility, for example. All these are keys. And the way also I would say everyday life and work is organized in a quite local way is something very important. In big cities, big metropolis, like the Greater Paris, but it's same in Greater London or Berlin. It's you have to have services which is easy reachable by people, that you don't use your car, and the easy access of people to just basic shops, for example, or basic culture. This is non-tech aspects, but very fundamental and basics of living in a city. And I think, and we'll get back to that, we'll have a clear example, how innovation is a means towards maybe, this transition in terms of sustainability in building, in terms of, for example, logistics also is something very important. And so it's really how the city works and how it is built, I think.
Okay, and maybe to go down this road of data, to what extent technology and data will be enablers? Will tomorrow's cities look like George Orwell, 1984, like Big Brother will watch you no matter what? Which do you think, which roles for non-tech solution also, and maybe circularity or recycling? Alex, maybe if you want to take this one.
I think it's so important that the technologies we build are able to enhance the lives that we have in cities, and I think that's really key. We need technology solutions that can really accelerate what we're trying to do as humanity. Now, I'm really interested in technologies that can give us a step change in capabilities. If you look at a number of really breakthrough technologies, like being able to work with multimodal transport solutions, from micro-mobility to ride-hailing, or what we've seen on sustainability with moving towards electrified fleets. I think these have been really seismic shifts, and we've seen very rapid adoption by consumers for these technologies because of the benefits they apply. Now let's take autonomy, which is what we work on at WAYVE. Autonomy is going to have a profound impact on society. It's going to reduce the cost of mobility to make it a really clear winner that it's more cost-effective, safe, and sustainable to catch an autonomous solution than it is to have private car ownership. When we start to see that removal of private car ownership, when we see shared mobility change car parks to green parks, make things more efficient, then we can start to really build a service that can support what humanity is trying to achieve. And I agree with what's being said. Data is key to that, because what's measured gets managed and gets improved. And as well, that really allows us to build in a more intelligent system, and one that can meaning you have to build infrastructure to be able to fit the technology into the city. So we won't need to change junctions to have traffic lights that are specific for autonomous vehicles, but we should be able to have the data to train a system so that it can really seamlessly interact and coexist with us as humanity. So that requires it to understand how humans move, predict what we need, understand where demand is, and have the intelligence to actually interact safely and move a physical object around in the world with us as humanity. I think that's really key, and that's what's going to give us a step change through autonomy.
Thank you. And maybe Oliver, if you do you see also data being used by your solution at this stage at Skeleton?
Well, in energy storage, definitely. Let's say if you look at how we've been able to advance lithium-ion batteries as a technology, then that is mostly based on the information we've been able to receive through use of these technologies. So it's in the maybe not in the first steps, but it's still a kind of a growing industry. For example, in other technologies such as ultracapacitors, it's less so because they're more novel, more out there, more just beginning to get put into use. But definitely you can what you can achieve through data is a more right-sized solution. So coming back to what's our mission at Skeleton as well, we try to bring the costs down. So if you know how your product is going to be used very precisely, then that means you don't need to overscale, which means the initial cost of ownership is going to be cheaper.
Okay, and maybe apart from the technology, we often talk about the public policy and they can affect or accelerate. Break or springboard for you to accelerate innovation in the smart city? Meriem, maybe.
To be honest, I think it's more a springboard because very often innovation in the city around smart city can be very local and don't have immediate return on investment, and to be able to scale it and to put it in a more global vision, there is a need of, I would say, political willingness and support, really to scale those good ideas. And I'll give you some examples. For example, we have some initiatives around incentive payment in the waste business. I would call it the pay as you throw. And this is something very positive for the environment because the objective is really to get that people are charged according to how much they produce, how much waste they produce. And this is really experimented by some municipalities with a strong push. So if there was not this political willingness, it would have been difficult to push those positive ideas for the environment and innovative one. Also, if I take the example of smart city projects, the large smart city project in France, for example in Dijon, Angers, they were pushed with a strong political willingness because those projects are complex, expensive. You need a vision, a long-term vision to say, okay, I'm going to work on verticals around environment, security, mobility, and I have this global vision for the city. So you really need, yes, this long-term vision and more public service mindset to push, I think, those initiatives and to scale them.
Interesting. So probably a framework and the long-term vision that will enable change to happen. Maybe Alex, if you want to add something on the autonomous driving, did you see any useful public policy, or on the contrary, some breaks?
I've been really heartened to see what's been happening with in the autonomous driving space, because it's going to create a $1 trillion market, a huge opportunity for countries to really improve everything from safety to sustainability to the ease of mobility in their cities. And I think this is unprecedented. We've seen governments look to regulate and legislate for this technology before it even exists. And Europe is at the forefront of that. So a 2019 KPMG report reported that the top 3 environments for autonomous driving regulation are in order: Singapore, UK, Netherlands. And I'm sure France isn't so far behind that. I've been really encouraged by some of the conversations in the last 2 days around this. So we're seeing governments proactively legislate to be able to enable autonomy. We've already seen it for autonomous driving assistance services, and soon, I think by 2025, we'll be in a position to launch driverless, occupantless autonomous driving vehicles. And so we're starting with ride-hailing and last-mile grocery delivery within Europe. And in these spaces, in order to enable them, you need a number of key regulatory powers to be in place to give you the ability to train large-scale systems off the data, as we talked about before. And so we put data collection devices on our fleet partners. We work with 3 of the largest fleets in the UK in both parcel and grocery delivery, and we collect data from their human-driven fleets. We use this data to train our autonomous driving system to be able to drive in a very safe and performant way, one that can adapt to all of the areas in the cities. So with that data and the legislation that allows us to both trial the vehicles and in a few years start to launch commercial services, I think it's an absolute springboard for us, and I'm really pleased to see European governments legislating this proactively.
Great. And so Paris is becoming Amsterdam, no more cars or very slow cars that can drive 30 kilometers per hour. We know that mobility and transportation will be key to create livable urban spaces. How will we move around cities, and which infrastructure maybe will be needed for new mobility solution, multimodal mobility, or even autonomous? Maybe Oliver, if you want to get started.
Absolutely. I think the key word that you touched there is very correct: multimodality. And it's great to have this talk here in Paris that's shown great strides in the last few years and is an example to other European cities. So what does it mean, multimodality? It means flexibility, right? So maybe today I have my grocery bags and you know, I don't want to take a bike, I want to take a car, whether it's my own car, personal car, or it's a shared car, or in a few years' time, an autonomous car. But then, you know, usually maybe I might take a bike, I might prefer another day's public transportation and so on. So there's a change going on already in that direction. Unfortunately, not equal in all European cities, but it seems that there's a change in the air. But independent of what kind of transportation we will be using, it's becoming more and more clear that it's going to be electric. And now there we see, unfortunately, a few challenges. So if we imagine the demand on electricity generation, in the next couple of decades, it's been predicted that this will go up into between 10 to 15%. Maybe it doesn't sound that much, but in Germany, for example, peak energy consumption was in 2007, and so actually energy consumption has been going down, and what it does raise is its 0.something percentages per year. So if we imagine going 10 to 15% over a couple of decades, that's going to be tricky because we want that to be renewable energy as well, right? So there's that end, but kind of further to the point of European cities, how will we charge these vehicles? Again, we've set ourselves a goal with the EU Green Deal of having 1 million charge points by 2025. Right now, so end of last year, we were at around 230,000, and that has come across over many, many years. So we only have a few years to get to triple that. Is that within possibility? And now, how to make that happen, circling back to the question of springboards or not, I think this is where governments, city governments, and otherwise need to step in and set the tone and also act as demand generators to a degree because there is a difference between a charger and a charger as well. Do we want to charge our cars in 9 hours, or do we want to charge them in 20 minutes or in 5 minutes, for example, right? So, and all of that comes or is dependent on demand, and this is where city governments will need to act.
Yeah, for example, you can have a long time charging time in your home at night, but when you're on a highway, you need a pretty fast charger.
Absolutely, and let's say the problem becomes even more severe if we go past to personal passenger vehicle. Imagine charging a truck or a bus and so on. So it just expands, and I personally am not sure that, unfortunately, that our infrastructure right now is ready, and we're kind of acknowledging the severity of the issue.
Are we going faster with hybrid vehicles than we do for chargers? So we would have a lot of new cars, but not being able to support their mobility, basically?
Yes, so this is exactly a problem we might run into, because you have the consumer. People are changing their mindsets. They're ready to adapt electric, and this is what we all want for our cities: cleaner air, so on and so forth. But once you start hitting that problem of, okay, I now bought this car, but I'm not able to charge it, then that will have an impact on this consumer mindset as well.
And on the autonomous driving, do you see any? Because WAYVE is kind of like an AI brain that is going to operate, if I understand correctly, with the new type of cars. But do you need any infrastructure or anything to capture maybe the data and train your brain, basically?
We've built a really adaptable driving intelligence that we license to fleets, and it can integrate into a number of different vehicles. But I wanted to pick up, because I completely agree with what Oliver was saying around multimodality and flexibility being key to provide mobility services in the future. The challenge with multimodality, though, right, is with flexibility, you get very peaky demand. Take, for example, today, take a ride-hailing driver today. They will often switch into another gig economy app and do food delivery or grocery delivery as demand peaks and wanes between cycles. Now, the problem with this is that you have different vehicle classes being operated for different use cases with very cyclic demand, and it's very hard to provide a reliable and low latency service to the consumer. So this is where I think autonomy can really change the game, because we can provide autonomous robots that can be adaptable, that can serve a number of different use cases, that can have very high utilization, and also be very flexible on the supply. And so they can relocate around the city, they can essentially meet the demand and operate in a way that can meet the different needs as we adapt between the different use cases. So we can build very flexible hardware platforms that are able to deal with both human, people and goods mobility, and have a driver that can really meet the demand cycles and doesn't have restrictions around hours of work or types of geographies that they want to operate in. And so I think the flexibility and the availability and reliability of these kind of services are going to allow us to have multimodal solutions.
Very interesting, and we can see how sharing basically systems create a new kind of paradigm with supply and demand imbalance that you need to solve on very different kind of usage, basically.
One other comment I'd make as well is that it's not just about getting these solutions to market, but it's maintaining them over time, because as the needs of how we move around cities changes. Take the pandemic, for example. This has completely changed movement patterns. So this means we need to have a really adaptable mobility service. And I think with autonomy, we need a really adaptable autonomy service that can adapt to different vehicle types, different use cases as consumer demand changes, as we've seen during the pandemic. If we create a very rigid system, we're not going to be able to meet the changing needs of society, and that's when you'll end up with thousands of scooters littered on the road, not providing any use. So it's really important that we're able to adapt, and that's what we're building at WAYVE.
So I think we have time for one last question. So maybe beyond mobility, smart cities encompass many different topics. How will water supply, smart grid or waste management be evolving? How do you see basically the evolutions of cities operations? Maybe Meriem for Suez.
Yes. At Suez, we've developed our smart city business reusing our monitoring capabilities that we've developed in the water and waste on other verticals, and we are doing that with partners. And that's why interconnection of data is very important to be the smoother and the most efficient in this objective. So to build this market, and mostly in the market, we see a lot of big projects with command centers and consortium and so on. I believe that the next phase of this market will be more mid-sized with a higher focus on open data and more, I would say, drive from the municipality who will increase their maturity regarding data and doing their own pick and choose on the solution they would need, either on mobility or on security and so on, because maybe in a midterm view, they would manage themselves all these data collection and choose the right partners, it will be a more democratized, I would say, vision of this smart city if there is this awareness and maturity of municipalities that they need to invest on skills, on data and open data, for example.
Thank you, and maybe David, on the Metropole, Grande Métropole de Paris side, what do you see?
First, I would like to come back just to one point, the role of local governments, for instance, in fostering innovation. I think it's important. I have one example, because here at Metropole Grand Paris, the Greater Paris, we are establishing a low emission zone at a wide scale. So, and I think this is also a strong incentive. It's meant, a strong incentive to have, of course, the fleets moving towards electrification, but it's also a huge opportunity for innovation, and it brings, in a way, openness in the heads, in the mindsets of the mayors, of the local government to accept and welcome innovation, to tackle this question of how do we lower the emission of carbon emission and pollution, of course. And I think it goes together, it comes together. Establishing such a regulation and fostering innovation, and that's what we can try to do together. And so I think for the future of let's say the cities, or I would say just stress this point that there is also, it's important to encourage also, let's say, low-tech innovation. I think it's important, all what you say, it has to be combined also with encouraging soft mobility. Is, for example, we are building a Vélopolitain, so it's a network of cycling paths at the scale of the Greater Paris. And I think such infrastructures are very important also to develop services afterwards. So both come together. I think this is infrastructure, this kind of basic organization of the city and innovation.
Very interesting. So smart and non-smart, a long-term measurable goal with carbon measurement, for example, global policy and public policies to give us a framework to innovate, and at the root of everything, data. I think it was very interesting. Thank you all for all your interesting insights, and thank you for listening. I think we are good to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.